Thank you, Isabel, for giving us this opportunity to appreciate George's huge contribution. I'd like to, I wrote out a bit of text and I started saying the whole crystallographic community will unite to honour George. First, he was a wonderful researcher. I've always thought crystallography is simple in concept. Repeating lattice generates observable diffraction. The correct model allows us to calculate a mirror of that. But the messy complexities that hinder finding that correct model, correcting consequences of distorted diffraction, sorting out space groups, finding phases to generate the maps which will show that model. And to quote, "There's many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. Yorkshire often gives good things." George provided elegant, complete tools to navigate the whole process. Many will remember him for his direct methods Sheldrick suites, which solved multiple structures. But he also provided tools for data processing, for refinement, for phase improvement, for model building. There's no aspect of the discipline to which he did not contribute. Throughout his long career, he never rested on his laurels. He was always thinking of the next challenge and where the methodology could go. The second way I'd like to acknowledge him was as a reference. One has to admit that George's programs are not easy to read. But when I was confused over complicated issues such as the best way to convert coordinates from one lattice to another, what on earth anisotropic B factor was referring to, I knew that if I could follow his train of thought, the answer would be there. And perhaps I should boast that George did once tell me I was one of the very few people who'd found a mistake in his code. He had a sign wrong. The third way to acknowledge him as a teacher, his students from Göttingen will honour him in this way greatly. But for the European Union and other organisations provided funds for workshops to bring together young researchers from all the countries of Europe. I've been part of many of these, and those where George was a tutor stand out in my memory. Many of the tutors, including me, were there because we had some unique specialist skill. But George, first of all, had many skills, and B, he was such an experienced, excellent lecturer. His presentations were always clear and a joy to listen to.
Okay, so that was Eleanor Dodson from York. This is now Keith Wilson from York. And I would just like to say first that George was a fantastic person and a crystallographer, and he inspired whole generations of students and postdocs throughout his career. And many of those have gone on to hold important positions elsewhere. And of course, I knew of George as the author of Sheldrick, which was solving the great majority of small and medium-sized crystal structures by the mid-1980s. And when I was at EMBL Hamburg, Jules Hendricks and Arno Lentfer had built the first imaging plate scanner for automatically recording X-ray images to computer disk. And this was a fantastic step forward in protein crystallography at a synchrotron. It was truly the first automatic scanner in routine use for PX data collection, and meant for a couple of years at least, Hamburg was really at the forefront of the synchrotron teams around the world. And such was the sensitivity of the image plate that we rapidly found we could record atomic 1 angstrom resolution for at least some, unfortunately only usually small proteins. Our first example was rubidoxin, which Spicek Douter and I collaborated with Larry Seeker on, and Larry provided the crystals. We initially refined this with the standard restrained least squares protein packages and published this in Acta Crist in 1992. And at this point, Spicek and I were keen to see if the data were really of sufficient quality to apply more conventional methods of small molecule refinement to such structures. With it in mind, we went to a supramolecular computing school at the Bischenberg near Strasbourg, at which George was lecturing. And the two of us approached George with the aim of asking him to try to use Sheldrick on reproduction data. I must say his immediate reaction was rather skeptical. We could see he felt this was just another pair of annoying protein crystallographers troubling him with their much less than ideal data. Nevertheless, after a short conversation, we persuaded him to look more closely at the data, and to our great pleasure, he was immediately persuaded that these data were of sufficient quality for him to have a go at refining the structure with his small molecule techniques, and we went on to publish that. I would like to feel that this, at least in part, stimulated George's increasing interest in protein crystal structures and the development of shell X, C, D, and E. In addition, we convinced George and Emke Pohl to bring some of their more challenging supramolecular structures, such as octreotide, which had resisted solution, probably due to limited data quality on a conventional X-ray source, to the Hamburg outstation. And the improved data quality, which we got with the imaging plate to atomic resolution, instantly allowed George and Emke to solve these structures. A fine reciprocal collaboration between small and macromolecular crystallographers. And indeed, Thomas Schneider, who did his PhD in the group at Hamburg on atomic resolution structures, later did a postdoc with George in Göttingen. So this was a fantastic time, really a nice collaboration between small and macromolecular structures. Thank you.
Isabel, this is something I just thought of while Keith was talking. In the IUCR meeting at Seattle, we went on to a computer school afterwards, and we kept on saying, well, direct methods doesn't work, of course, for large structures. You'll never get more than 1,000 atoms. And at that computing school, George was able to announce that they had solved lysozyme, and lysozyme had 1,001 atoms. So there. So I didn't mention anything about that direct methods part, but the sort of incredibly ingenious way of using sort of direct methods and other things to get phases for large structures. But I hope somebody else is talking about that, are they?
Well, no, okay. Around the world, a lot of people made ever more complicated attempts at applying direct methods to large molecules. Most of them were rather esoteric and rarely worked.
Yes.
Whenever George did things, they actually worked.
Yes.